When you hear the word mummy, what do you picture? For most of us, it's a single powerful image. A gold-masked pharaoh buried deep inside a pyramid. A body wrapped in linen, surrounded by the treasures and curses of ancient Egypt. For centuries, our whole idea of mummification has been shaped by the sands of the Nile, a practice we connect to one time, one place, and one people. But what if that picture is completely wrong? What if I told you the world's most shocking mummy discoveries, the ones rewriting human history, aren't being pulled from dusty tombs at all? They're emerging from the ice of the Arctic Circle, the world's driest deserts, and the peaks of the Andes Mountains. And the very oldest ones? They weren't in Egypt. In fact, they weren't even close. These aren't just bodies. They're stories frozen in time that challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient cultures, their beliefs, and our own shared past. In this video, we're going to the most unexpected corners of the globe to reveal the burial secrets of lost civilizations. These are the mummies that history forgot, and their secrets are finally being unearthed. Chapter 1: The World's First Mummies, the Chinchorro of Chile. For decades, we thought the story of artificial mummification began here, on the desolate coast of South America, in the grip of the Atacama Desert in modern-day Chile. But incredible new research has completely changed the timeline. A 2025 study has identified smoke-dried mummies across Southeast Asia and China. Incredibly, some of these remains, preserved over slow-burning fires, may date back as far as 12,000 years, potentially making them the oldest known form of artificial mummification on Earth. But while Asia may hold the record for age, it was a simple fishing culture in Chile, known as the Chinchorro, that developed a tradition of death so profound and complex that it predates the Egyptian pharaohs by over 2,000 years. First studied in detail by German archaeologist Max Uli in 1917, the earliest Chinchorro mummies date back an astonishing 7,000 years to around 5050 BC. To put that in perspective, when Chinchorro artists were crafting their dead into eternal statues, the first stones of Stonehenge hadn't been raised, and the Great Pyramids of Giza were still millennia in the future. But what truly rewrites history isn't just their age, it's their philosophy. In ancient Egypt, mummification was a privilege reserved for pharaohs and the elite. The Chinchorro believed something radically different. They mummified almost everyone: men, women, elders, and most poignantly, their children. Archaeologists have found that some of the most elaborate mummies were infants and even fetuses, suggesting a society gripped by a deep communal grief. Recent scientific analysis offers a heartbreaking explanation. The rivers in the Atacama Desert, the only source of fresh water, were naturally contaminated with high levels of arsenic. This would have caused catastrophic rates of infant mortality and miscarriages. For the Chinchorro, death was a constant tragedy. Mummification wasn't about status, it was a way of coping, a way to keep their loved ones with them and deny death its victory. And their methods were unlike anything seen before or since. The Chinchorro developed several techniques, the most famous being the black mummies and red mummies. For the black mummy technique, the oldest style, the body was completely disassembled. Skin, muscles, and organs were stripped from the skeleton. The bones were then cleaned, dried, and reinforced with sticks. The skull was often opened to remove the brain, then packed with grass or ash. They would rebuild the body over the skeleton, sculpting it with clay and plant fibers. A thick paste of black manganese was painted over the body, creating a dark, glossy shell, and a clay mask was placed on the face. These weren't just preserved bodies, they were human statues containing the very bones of the deceased. Later, the red mummy technique evolved. Embalmers made precise incisions to remove the organs, dried the cavities, and packed them with materials like earth and feathers. The skin was sewn back up and the body was painted with vibrant red ochre, while the wig and face were often painted black. These mummies weren't just buried and forgotten. Evidence suggests the Chinchorro, a nomadic people, carried these mummified relatives with them, living alongside generations of their dead. In 2021, UNESCO recognized the Chinchorro settlements and their incredible tradition as a World Heritage Site, cementing their place as the originators of one of humanity's most fascinating rituals. They prove that the impulse to preserve our dead begins not with kings, but with fishermen on a poisoned coast. Chapter 2. A 5,300-year-old cold case. Ötzi the Iceman. From the world's driest desert, we now travel to the frozen peaks of the European Alps. Here in 1991, two German hikers stumbled upon a discovery that would captivate the world. Emerging from a melting glacier in the Ötztal Alps was the body of a man. At first, authorities thought it was a lost mountaineer. But the strange primitive tools hinted at a much older story. What they had found was a perfectly preserved time capsule from the Copper Age. He was named Ötzi the Iceman, and he died approximately 5,300 years ago. Unlike the Egyptian and Chinchorro mummies, Ötzi wasn't deliberately preserved. He was a natural mummy, freeze-dried by the wind and ice of the high Alps. He is a snapshot of a single life, and his body tells the story of a brutal death. For years, it was assumed Ötzi died in a storm. But in 2001, an X-ray revealed something everyone had missed: a flint arrowhead lodged deep in his left shoulder, which had severed an artery. This was no accident. Ötzi was murdered. He also had a severe cut on his hand, likely a defensive wound from a fight days earlier. Ötzi the Iceman was a fugitive, fleeing an enemy into the mountains where he was struck down from behind. He is the world's oldest cold case. Because he's so perfectly preserved, we know his last meal was ibex meat and einkorn wheat. We know he was about 45 years old, stood 5'2", and had a host of health problems: hardened arteries, gallstones, parasites, and likely Lyme disease. His body is also covered in 61 tattoos. They aren't images, but simple lines and crosses around his lower back and joints. Researchers discovered they correspond almost perfectly with areas of arthritis, suggesting they were therapeutic, a form of primitive acupuncture, making him one of the earliest known patients in medical history. But perhaps most revolutionary is what recent DNA analysis has revealed. Studies, including one from 2025, analyzed the genomes of dozens of other people who lived in the same region. The results were shocking. While Ötzi shared some ancestry with his neighbors, mostly descended from Anatolian farmers, his specific genetic profile was unique. His paternal and maternal lineages don't match any other ancient or modern individuals found. This paints a new picture of Ötzi. He wasn't just another alpine man, he was a genetic outlier. Was he a traveler from a distant tribe? The last survivor of a fading lineage? Could his outsider status have played a role in his violent death? The more science uncovers about the Iceman, the deeper the mystery becomes. Chapter 3. The Enigmas of the Arctic, Phantom Traders and Buried Children. From the high Alps, our final journey takes us to a place that defies all expectations for mummies: the unforgiving, frozen expanse of the Arctic Circle. Here, in the permafrost of Siberia and Greenland, discoveries speak of mysterious cultures and the brutal realities of life at the edge of the world. Our first stop is a remote site in western Siberia called Zeleny Yar. In 1997, archaeologists began excavating a medieval necropolis and found something unlike anything seen before. Instead of simple burials, they discovered individuals wrapped in intricate cocoons of birch bark and fur. Some were encased in copper sheets that covered their faces and bodies. The copper, combined with the freezing permafrost, accidentally mummified them for nearly a millennium. The burials themselves were a puzzle. The individuals were all male or young children, their feet pointing towards a nearby river for reasons we don't understand. But the real shock came from the artifacts buried with them. Among the remains were bronze bowls from ancient Persia, nearly 6,000 kilometers away. This shattered the image of medieval Siberia as an isolated wasteland. It was evidence of a wealthy, unknown civilization with long-distance trade routes connecting the Arctic to the heart of the ancient world. DNA analysis has only deepened the enigma. We don't know who these people were or what they called themselves. They are a phantom civilization, their faces forever hidden behind masks of copper. Thousands of miles east, another group of mummies tells an equally powerful story. In 1972, on the coast of Greenland, hunters discovered a rock crevice near an Inuit settlement called Kila Kitsok. Inside were 2 graves with the naturally mummified bodies of 6 women and 2 children from the 15th century. They were so well preserved that the intricate facial tattoos on the women were still perfectly visible, offering an unprecedented glimpse into the culture of the Thule people, ancestors of the modern Inuit. But it was the youngest mummy that revealed the most heartbreaking secret. One grave held a 6-month-old baby boy. He showed no signs of illness. Scientists now believe, based on Inuit tradition, that he was buried alive. His mother had died, and with no one to nurse him, the community made a devastating choice. To prevent a slow death from starvation, the child was placed alongside his deceased mother, a tragic mercy killing that speaks to the harsh realities of Arctic survival. Chapter 4: Status and Science. The Social Mummies of Europe. Not all mummies were about the afterlife. Sometimes the motives were far more worldly. Our next stop is Palermo, Sicily, in the Capuchin catacombs. This isn't an ancient tomb, but a library of the dead, where from the 16th century to the early 20th, mummification became the ultimate social status symbol. Lining the walls are thousands of bodies dressed in their finest clothes. Here, wealthy citizens paid the Capuchin friars to have their bodies preserved and displayed. The friars used a process of slow dehydration, placing bodies in special rooms called strainers for months. The desiccated corpses were then washed with vinegar, dressed, and placed in the corridors for family to visit. It was a practice for the rich, but it's here we find the most famous resident, a mummy so perfectly preserved she's known as Sleeping Beauty. Her name is Rosalia Lombardo. She was just 2 years old when she died of pneumonia in 1920. Her father, a wealthy official, was so overcome with grief he hired Alfredo Salafia, a renowned Sicilian embalmer, to preserve her forever. For decades, Salafia's formula was a secret. But researchers recently found his manuscripts and revealed the revolutionary cocktail: formalin to kill bacteria, glycerin to prevent drying, salicylic acid to stop fungi, and zinc salts for rigidity. The result is breathtaking and unsettling. Over a century later, Rosalia appears to be merely sleeping. Her blonde hair still frames her face, and her organs are still intact. She's so pristine that an optical illusion caused by light sometimes makes it seem as if her eyes are blinking at visitors. Rosalia Lombardo is a testament to a father's love and a triumph of early 20th century science, a perfect, heartbreaking fusion of grief and chemistry. This wasn't limited to Italy. In Vac, Hungary, a forgotten church crypt rediscovered in the 1990s revealed 265 naturally mummified bodies from the 18th and 19th centuries. Buried in painted coffins, these were the town's middle class, preserved by the crypt's unique microclimate, another example of how across Europe, the desire to preserve the body created its own unique chapter in the story of mummification. Chapter 5: New Frontiers and Shattered Expectations. Our map of the mummified world is still expanding, thanks to new discoveries and cutting-edge technology. Our first destination is a place where mummification was long thought not to exist: South Africa. In 1999, archaeologist Dr. Johan Binneman was excavating a cave in the Baviaanskloof wilderness area when he made a stunning discovery. Buried in a shallow grave, wrapped in medicinal leaves, was the naturally mummified body of a man from about 1,000 years ago, nicknamed Moses. While natural mummification is rare in sub-Saharan Africa, this discovery challenged both geographical and cultural assumptions, proving that practices of preservation could arise in the most unexpected of places. While new finds expand our map, new tech is letting us meet the individuals behind the mummies. In Colombia, mummies from the indigenous Guane people have been found with detailed funerary masks. Using high-resolution CT scans and DNA analysis, forensic artists can now create astonishingly realistic facial reconstructions. We're no longer looking at a desiccated body, but at the face of a person who lived centuries ago. This digital unwrapping is revolutionizing the field, allowing us to learn more than ever without physically disturbing the fragile remains. And the discoveries continue to push our timeline back further and further. As we mentioned, recent studies have identified smoke-dried mummies across Southeast Asia and China that could be up to 12,000 years old, potentially the oldest on Earth. From the mountains of South Africa to forensic labs and ancient sites in Asia, the story of mummies is still being written, proving our understanding of how ancient humans treated their dead is far from complete. We started with a single image, the Egyptian pharaoh. But our journey has shown us that mummification isn't one story, it's thousands. It's a universal human narrative that stretches across every continent and tens of thousands of years. It's the story of the Chinchorro fishermen who, driven by grief, invented an art form to keep their children with them. It's the story of Ötzi, a murder victim whose body became a perfect Copper Age time capsule. It's the copper-masked traders of Siberia, hinting at a lost chapter of Arctic history and the heartbreaking choice made for an Inuit baby in Greenland. It's the story of Rosalia Lombardo, the little girl whose father refused to say goodbye and turned to science for an immortal memory. These discoveries show that preserving the dead is a deeply human practice. The methods were shaped by the environment, from the dry deserts of Chile to the frozen ice of the Alps, and the motives were as diverse as humanity itself, ranging from religion to status to pure, unfiltered love. These aren't just bodies, they're our ancestors. They are silent witnesses, and thanks to the tireless work of scientists, they're finally beginning to speak. And as they do, they force us to rethink the history we thought we knew, reminding us the past is a vast, mysterious place, with so many more secrets waiting to be unearthed. If you want to uncover more secrets from the ancient world, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss our next investigation. And I'd love to know what you think in the comments. Which of these mummy discoveries shocked you the most? Thanks for watching.